Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here today to talk about the Public School Facilities Cooperative Funding Program. I'm Gideon Tolman, the Financial Officer at the Department of Education, and we have Spencer Barzy, our Deputy Superintendent, and Rob Sepich, our Budget Director, who will be helping talk through this today. As we've talked to most of you about at this point, House Bill 338 passed the legislature this past legislative session, and it updated the cooperative fund, which has been on the books for about 20 years. But the point of the amendments were to increase the opportunity to use the funding. So there was about $25.5 million already in the fund, and then an additional 25 million was added, and that was from the bond levy equalization fund. So we have about $50.5 million available to distribute, and we're going to talk through what that looks like as far as applying for the funding and using the funding and potentially paying the funding back if that applies to you. And we'll talk more about those different situations. As we move forward, feel free to put questions in the chat or just chime in if you have questions as we go along. We'll also take time to answer questions at the end. And we are recording this meeting so that we can post it on our Department of Education website for those who weren't able to attend today, or if we want to refer back to this. And Spencer, I will turn it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We just want to first take a minute and go through some of the slides that help understand who is eligible. So just to start with, in this House Bill 338, where this originated from, charter schools are not eligible for this funding. But there's essentially three ways that a school district can qualify. So first, under A, a school district has not successfully passed a bond or a levy in the last 2 years. So we're going to say that for the last 2 years, in the year 2023 to 2025, that's going to be the spot where we're going to have you be within the 2 years as the statute requires. And then B, the Division of Occupational Professional Licenses. So DOPL has identified unsafe facilities in there. They could actually submit an application on your behalf. In this case, we envision this to be a situation that's pretty drastic, likely where a school district maybe has ignored requests from DOPL or other areas that are just really obvious of safety related. And then C, the last option, the district has passed a bond or plant facilities levy to repair, replace unsafe conditions, but the cost of fixing unsafe conditions exceeds the amount of money raised. One example of that might be you pass a bond to fix an unsafe condition, but inflation maybe has exceeded the cost of what you actually had received quotes for to fix that. And so in that area, you could certainly submit an application for the committee to consider. Ready for the next slide. So unsafe conditions. So when you have an unsafe condition, this needs to be something, the safety deficiency needs to be documented by a qualified person or entity, such as DOPL or an engineer or a county building inspector. The committee wanted to be sure we got away from situations where a janitor or maybe a building administrator who may not be qualified in this situation to be able to submit an application. So we just want it, the deficiency needs to be identified by somebody who's documented or who's qualified there. And it does need to be tied to a safety concern aligned with some of those requirements that are linked, and which really won't be too hard. That when you look at those two, that statute and then the Uniform School Building Safety Code, like there's a plethora of ways that you can tie unsafe conditions to. And then the application, which we'll get to later, you'll have to explain how the safety deficiency in the money received will be able to mitigate that safety deficiency that you're trying to fix. So district appointed supervisor. So in the case that the committee does award you a dollar amount greater than 5 million, the state superintendent, which is Superintendent Critchfield, needs to appoint a district supervisor within 35 calendar days. Now, when we get to this point, this isn't going to be something that the necessarily the State Department is going to shop and hire. This will be a joint effort on behalf of the district and the State Department, where we approve somebody that you have a relationship with, or that maybe you've worked with in past. But this isn't something that we're going to overstep and jump in and just hire somebody that you may not be willing to work with very well. So the district supervisor, when it's appointed, will oversee the project to ensure that it's completed and approved, and must report to the panel as directed. And it's important to note that this supervisor will serve the duration of the project at the pleasure of the superintendent. So Superintendent Critchfield. When you look at the Idaho Code 622.112 or 2212, there is some unique language in there of it, but just know that this will be somebody that will have a good relationship with you, and that somebody that will serve at the pleasure of Superintendent Critchfield. So that code reference also illustrates that the cost for the district supervisor will be paid by the school district. Those are costs that you'll need to incur. Rob?
Thank you, Spencer. So as part of the consideration, the panel is going to be looking at what is the most effective use of the funds over a 20-year period. So, not just bringing in some temporary mobile units, but actually fixing the problem and making sure that it's fixed for a good duration. The other item is that the panel has the capacity to modify the plan really throughout the entire process, reject plans if they feel that that is not going to be the best use of funds. One item that is interesting within the statute, the bill clarifies that if you tried to pass a bond in the past and it failed, but the panel comes up with a more cost-efficient solution, there is a provision that may require that to go back out to the for another vote through the electorate. So that is a consideration to have as part of the funding. We're still ironing out what that guidance is going to look like, and where the panel is going to be able to make those determinations. Now, the total project costs are supposed to be paid by this cooperative facilities fund. But when it comes to the district share, it's already discounted. The statute utilizes that value index percentage from the bond levy equalization program as if it was still going, to kind of discount the total amount of your principal. So generally about 90% of the total cost would be then incurred based on each individual district. And then of course, we still have to comply with any of our procurement or our building codes. None of that is waived with this, simply just a different mechanism for providing that fund. One of the other items is the adjustments this bill did to your House Bill 292 facilities funds. So in the bold there, we showed where some of those adjustments happened, that it slid into the second slot for those uses of funding. So when we look at the waterfall, still be using those school facilities funds to pay off any of the bonds you have that were made prior to July of 2025. Then next would come into the repayments for these projects that we're discussing today under the cooperative fund. And then after those are exhausted, then moving on to the rest of the bonds and supplemental levies. Now, interest on this one does get charged. It's an annual charge that we're going to be using the state's EIDL fund, which was about 4.3% last year as an average, and we're compounding that once annually. Then the first year's payment is going to act as the minimum payment throughout the duration of the repayment period, which again is 20 years. So we're not going to be, the statute does not allow for these costs to be exceeded of the amount actually owed by the district, so that original principal minus the difference of the bond levy value index gives you about 90% of your total project costs. But there is not necessarily a requirement that all of those funds are repaid back. So we only have to have that payment period for 20 years from the start of the project. And there are provisions that would allow this to effectively not cost the district anything. If you've got a large number of bonds that were put in place prior to July 1st of 2025, those bonds are going to be taking those facilities payments in that waterfall of uses, and you may not actually have to pay any of those back. There are no provisions that use any other sources of funding to repay these program costs. So it really is just where are you at in terms of your bonds, and how much of those being costs that are ahead of the cost from the facilities fund. And then as far as some time frames, so between June 16th and July 25th is our first application window. We have, the panel has 90 days to review and respond to these applications. That is a hard deadline. And then in August, we should start seeing some of those reviews come out. Now we're trying to be cognizant of your August 29th requirement to get any bond notices to the county clerk. So we'll try to prioritize those that may have to fit within that caveat of potentially going out for bond again if the panel does find a cheaper alternative. But we're still working through that with the panel in terms of how to actually implement. I think it's going back to Gideon now.
Thank you, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Before I pull up the application, I just want to reiterate something that Spencer and Rob were talking about. When this was going through the legislative process, some folks were saying, oh, this is a grant. Some were saying it's a loan. It's not really either. Well, it kind of depends, on the situation, like Rob was talking through. So if you have, a bond already on the books that you're paying for with your school district facilities funds, you'll keep putting that funding toward those outstanding bonds. If you don't have a bond and you receive some funding from the cooperative fund, then the money we send to you each August through the school district facilities fund, that will go toward this as a first priority if you don't have an outstanding bond. But like Rob was just saying, if you do have a bond and it's, a 20-year bond or longer, then you wouldn't have to pay this cooperative funding back. And so it'll just kind of depend on what you already have on the books. And as far as that waterfall of uses with the school district facilities fund goes. I'm going to pull up the application so that we can talk through that. Is that showing up okay on your end, you guys?
Looks good.
Okay, go ahead, Spencer.
So the top there of the application is pretty basic, right? Just district information, project title, project location. And then, so as we get into the meat of the application, question number 3 is essentially you're just going to explain which area A, B, or C that you qualify for that we reviewed in the slideshow there. If you are somebody that's failed the bond or a levy plat facility, or if it's an application for DOPL, or if you're under C of where the dollars that you raised are now insufficient to mitigate your existing safety concern. Question number 4, this is where you're going to explain the specific safety deficiency that's going to be mitigated if the funds are awarded to you. And then you're also going to tie it to that Title 39, Chapter 80 code or the Uniform School Building Safety. As we mentioned earlier, if you really do have a safety concern, it's going to be pretty easy to tie it to one or both of those. There's lots of options in there to be able to tie it to. Question number 5, you'll tell us about tell us which it is: new construction, renovation, or maintenance or repair. And then question number 6 is where you're going to provide a summary of the project, its entire purpose and scope. And you're going to include obviously how your efforts here of your proposed projects are going to rectify the unsafe building conditions. So the statute is pretty clear that it tasks the panel to make a decision that is the most economical solution for the problem when they look at the project over a 20-year time frame. So this is your chance to help the panel understand why your application is one of the best case scenario over 20 years. Question number 8 is just actually the dollar amount that you're requesting. Question number 9 in summary is going to be a history of your levy, the dollar amounts, the years, and any relevant details that were surrounding your bond or your plant facility levy. So just remember, supplemental levies don't count. It has to be a plant facility level levy. And then question number 10 how was the funding requested? How did you calculate the dollar amount that you're asking? Did it come upon bids or market estimates? We just want to know that the dollar amount that you're requesting and just clarify that it is a valid number, not something that you just Googled or had ChatGPT generate for you. Questions 11 and 12, when do you want to start your project and your estimated completion date? And then 13, if the application is approved, when should the funds be transferred into the LEA's account? Question number 4 is just reminding you that you'll comply with all applicable state and building codes and also procurement laws and regulations, all those things that we dearly love. Number 15 is just reminding you of your obligation to pay back the dollars that are owed as outlined in House Bill 338. And then here, there's going to be some attachments that'll be needed for sure. Your detailed project budget, right? We want to see where the funds are going to go specifically. And then the documentation, the safety issues from qualified personnel. So if there are attachments needed that weren't able to be explained, we'll need those too. And then the rest of those bullet points may or may not be applicable, but if they do, we'd certainly want to see those. And obviously, if information here doesn't apply, we don't really want for you to submit it just so it's less information we have to sort through with all the applications. But if it's going to help your case in any fashion, we'd love for you to include it in the application. And so, and of course, in closing there on the application, we need the superintendent or DOPL representative signature and also your board chairman. Certainly, this is going to be something that your board's going to be aware of. And with that being said, Gideon and Rob, I think we're ready for questions if there are any. I don't see any in the chat, but feel free to take yourself off mute and ask questions if you have any.
You answered all the questions, Spencer and Rob.
We either really confused them or explained it really well.
Well, and something I'll just say with this one, it is maybe a little more complicated than it might otherwise be because it did take an existing statute and kind of changed some things, removed some things, added some things. And so it's kind of a little bit of layers on top of what was already in there for kind of the addressing safety concerns. And so that's why it's maybe a little more time intensive and detail intense than it might otherwise be. So thanks for your patience with that, you guys. And also as we keep moving forward through the process, if there are things that we need to do to update the form or the process or things like that, you know, keep us posted as you're moving through it. So one question did come in, you guys. Do we have to show that we requested funding from previous bonds to qualify for this?
Now say that question again, Gideon.
So do we have to show that we requested funding from previous bonds to qualify for this? So I don't know if I rephrase it, and I might be rephrasing it wrong, but CUNA team chime in, like, do you have to have failed a bond in order to qualify for it?
and did that specific, sorry, Gideon, this is Jason from CUNA. I have Brian and Brad in here as well. It's, it's like, say fencing is a need, but we didn't have that on our previous bond that failed. Can we put that need in here, or does it have to be directly connected to a project we asked for on a previous bond?
So I would think that's a great question there. I think that's going to be determined by the committee, right, when they're reviewing it. But if it's not, I don't want to say it has to be directly connected, like it doesn't have to be spelled out. But if it wasn't the intention of the district to fix that with the bond monies, then it's not likely to be approved. So if it's in there, I mean, the bond language isn't always spelled out specifically for everything you're going to fix in there. So as long as you can document that the bond that you attempted to pass or plant facilities levy attempted to pass was going to fix that safety concern, then it'll work. But if you don't have any intention as a district, then and you can't that can be documented or illustrated, then the committee is not likely to approve it.
And I think that's where that provision in statute kicks in, where, you might have to go back to the voters for that specific item before the panel would approve it. But that's what, to Spencer, or to Rob's point earlier, we're still kind of sorting through the details of how that would work.
If I might, too, the third option for funding is if you do pass that bond and it's simply not enough. So probably not what you're looking at in the team, but it's not only if there is a failed bond, there also could be a potential where a bond did pass, just isn't enough.
And I did just drop the application link into the chat too for you to, if anybody's anxious to get going on an application, you've got it now.
Can you share the slide deck with us so that we can just review it? Since the timeline's pretty tight to get the application in, and that way we can talk it through a bit.
You bet.
Thank you.
And maybe, I think you were already planning on this, Spencer, but maybe after this meeting, we could send an email out to everybody with those links, not just those folks who are on the meeting today, just so everybody has it in case we can't get it posted on the website as quickly as we would like to.
You bet.
Okay, and like I said earlier, we will, Spencer will send all this information to you guys, and then we'll also get it posted on the website, and we'll, as we said, we're still trying to sort through a little bit of this ourselves, but we've got a good committee that's helping us. So in statute, these plans are required to be reviewed by representative from DOPL, the Division of Occupational and Professional Licenses, and DPW, the Division of Public Works. And then last summer, for those of you that might remember all the fun we had last summer with facilities funding, we had an advisory committee that had construction company representatives, contractors, architects, legislators, and so we've got that same committee helping us with this as well, as far as reviewing and making sure we're adhering to the legislative intent and some of those things. Anything else before we sign off, you guys?
Gideon, Spencer, this is Scott. Do you anticipate a round 2 of this, or do you anticipate that a lot of this will be taken round 1?
For sure, a couple rounds. The committee just hasn't made a decision yet on if it's going to be an application that's just open and they review them as they receive them, or if they're going to say, hey, the next round of funding will be issued, say, October 15th, per se. That's something that the committee will decide. I think when they look at the first round of applications, they'll establish those guidelines of round 2, essentially.
So is the goal obviously to get this money spent as soon as you possibly can? Is that what the purpose is?
Absolutely, because when it's spent, that really gives us more ability to say to the legislatures, hey, thanks for the 50 million, but
Yeah.
as you can see, we have more applications. And so it really is our hope that it can be spent. But obviously the committee is going to look at those, the guidelines there and do the best they can. But that it would be great if we could have the money spent closer when the session begins. It just allows us to go and ask for more.
Okay.
So when Giddy was talking about all the fun we had last summer, that just shows the optimism of Gideon of how much, or you have a short memory, Gideon, of how much fun that was.
I know I've said it a lot, but thank you all for your patience and help through that process. And it's great to have all this, new facilities funding. It just takes a little bit to sort through it and get it all streamlined, so, as far as the process goes.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon. Hope you have a good rest of your day.